right, after my long, extensive research looking at every position in the Big Ten, it is now time to do the Gophers' official 2025 game by game record prediction. I now we talked about all their opponents and all the players across the league. They obviously have three non-conference games first, but let's I guess get into now what I think some reasonable expectations are for the Gophers this season, and what could be a really interesting year for PJ Fleck for the entire program, with a lot of young talent. It'll start August 28th, Thursday night, as it has been for as many years as I can remember. Um, Before Labor Day weekend, leaning into the State Fair. That's an argument for a different day, but I love the Thursday game. A lot of people don't like it because it makes getting there hard with work, travel, traffic, all that stuff. But I really like the Thursday night game, and this year they will be playing Buffalo from the MAC, a team that they cannot overlook. Gophers fans know too well that the MAC can catch you sleeping sometimes, as it did with Bowling Green in 2022. And if you remember, before that Bowling Green game, they barely snuck past Miami, Ohio. They've had better success recently against Eastern Michigan 2023 at home. Pretty convincing win. And then Bowling Green in the Quick Lane Bowl that year, another win there. But I'd argue this Buffalo team's probably better than all of those teams. I think this Buffalo team is a contender for the title in the MAC this year, behind Roberson. They also have a very good running game, and on paper, there's not much that they do better than the Gophers. But if this is a game where disaster scenario strikes, let's say Drake Lindsey comes out, throws a pick, maybe he looks overwhelmed in his first start. This Buffalo team can take advantage of that. Um, they are veteran. They have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Al J. Henderson at running back might be the best group of five running back this year. I don't think that's hyperbole at all. He's definitely in the discussion. There's a lot of good ones, but he's up there, one of the better running backs in the MAC. But I think the Gophers will take care of business in this one. I got them winning 30-10. I think that week one, you can get up for it. I think this team has enough veteran leadership for a young team. Um, but not a game you can just be like, hey, they're going to blow them out. I personally think that my hot take is I think Buffalo would beat Purdue on a neutral field, and they would be competitive against Cal as well. So, not an easy game by any means. Week two, they host Northwestern State, FCS opponent. Northwestern State's not a good program. In recent years, they've had Rhode Island. Last year, Rhode Island was a much better team, and they just absolutely destroyed Rhode Island. Western Illinois, they stunk. They destroyed Western Illinois. There was another one in there I'm forgetting, but this Northwestern State team's not good. There's no reason the Gophers should lose this game. My prediction, I think they shut them out, and we see this defense that I think is getting a little underrated, to be honest. There's not much to write home about Northwestern State, but I think this is a game the Gophers have the potential to shut them out. So I predicted a 41-0 win. Maybe we see, little Emmett Moorhead in this game, backup QB behind Drake Lindsey. Maybe Drake Lindsey gets a lot of confidence in this game. I remember last year against Rhode Island, that was when Brosmer kind of started getting that confidence. And maybe this is a spot for Lindsey to do that. So I think the Gophers take care of business before a week three trip to California. So on paper, the Gophers have a much better team than Cal. Uh, I like Cal's quarterback Devin Brown, transfer from Ohio State. Sneaky pickup. I I thought they were going to be sneaky this year before half their team entered the transfer portal in the spring. They literally just got absolutely ravaged by big programs. Notably, their star running back Jaden Ott left for Oklahoma. Their tight end went to Texas. Two guys that are like were borderline all conference type guys. To lose that in the spring just really had to hurt. And I think like their whole running back room in general like left a bunch of receivers. So I mean they just that's way too much to replace in the spring portal window to really be a competitive team. But with that being said, the Gophers have to travel cross country. They don't get a bye week before. After that Northwestern State game, which can kind of act as a bye week, like they're not going to be competitive in that game. Um, but you have to go cross country to Cal, play in Berkeley, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere. 9:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff. Kind of get you out of your schedule early in the year, which is never a good thing. So a lot of those circumstances make me think this is going to be a sloppy game, kind of like that UCLA game last year where the Gophers kind of snuck away right at the end. I think it could kind of be one of those games where like the Gophers are up 7-10 the whole game, like maybe an early touchdown, and then you look and you're like, man, it feels like they've been dominating this game, but they're only up by 7 or 10. I could see that happening in this one because I like Justin Wilcox. I like their head coach. He's a good head coach. Cal, right now in the modern college football, in the ACC, has to be one of the hardest power conference jobs in the country. And he had them very competitive last year, and then they lost their entire team. Uh, if they return Fernando Mendoza, Jay Knott, like they'd be a sneaky, sneaky good team this year, but uh, they're not on paper. So I think the Gophers win this, but again, another one. I wouldn't be so sure to just chalk it up as a win because this will be Drake Lindsey's first start on the road. And although it's not in a hostile environment by any means, it's not like Ethan who made his first start at Penn State in the whiteout game. I think easing into it in Berkeley is a little easier, but again, it's a night game. As much as people want to hate on West Coast college football, and they're passionate about it, but they do have fans, and they'll be there. I don't know how raucous of an environment it'll be, but like I said, it reminds me of that UCLA game last year. I could see a similar environment. Um, and again, it kind of sets up well for Drake Lindsey to maybe get his confidence in this game. But then the Gophers look out; they get a bye after that long trip, can kind of get back into a routine before Big Ten play starts. It's a good thing to get that early bye, especially when Rutgers comes to town in Week 5. Ethan Kaliakmanis' long-awaited return to Huntington Bank Stadium. Another game here that I think a lot of people are not. It just if you wrote out a definition for a trap game, it's this game. You're coming off a bye. You have Ethan coming into town where obviously a lot of the fans are like, not so good. How is he still starting quarterback? But he did beat you last year in Piscataway, obviously, on the road for Minnesota. But he played really well in that game. And Ethan gets a lot of criticism, but he improved a lot throughout last season. And I think he'll be good again this year. So this is going to be a tough game for the Gophers. The start time is not known yet, but if this was an 11 a.m. kickoff too, man, I could just see it being a sloppy, a sluggish, grind out Big Ten game. Um, and you got Ohio State next week on the road, just a perfect look ahead spot where you're like, oh, we started 3-0. All we got to do is beat our quarterback that left us, and then we got this marquee game at the Horseshoe. Gophers cannot overlook this game. I totally could see them losing this game. Totally. But I also don't think they'll lose to eighth and back to back. I think the coaching staff won't admit it. PJ Fleck won't admit it. None of the players will admit it. A lot of them who still like and respect Ethan Kaliakmanis, but I think they will be motivated from last year's loss. Maybe Jameson Gears gets a couple touchdowns in this game, redeems himself. And I think the Gophers win, but I got it close. Close, close, close. 2017, before arguably the most high profile game on their schedule, I should say. Not the biggest, because I think everyone's well aware that the Gophers are going to be at least 3 touchdown underdogs at Ohio State, probably closer to 4 or 5, to be honest. Um, and Ohio State does everything really good that I think this Gophers team will struggle with. And that's guarding wide receivers. I just don't love the Gophers cornerbacks, and I talked about it in the tier video last week. Uh, we're going to find out pretty darn quickly what you got in Zaquan Bryan and Jalen Bowden when they're guarding Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. In my opinion, the two best wide receivers in the sport who happen to be on the same team. Julian Sain at quarterback, who I think could win the Heisman Trophy this year. Um, so it just, I'm not going out on a limb and say, I don't think the Gophers will be competitive in this game, to be completely honest. I just think Ohio State just matches up too well, uh, where they do everything great, where the Gophers don't. And Ohio State's weaknesses this year might be in the trenches, where the Gophers have a little bit of questions there. So they, Darius Taylor could run the ball in this game if the Gophers' offensive line shows some stuff early in the year, but um, asking a redshirt freshman quarterback to go into the horseshoe is something else. So um, this could be a big learning game for a lot of people on the Gophers. Coy Parrish almost picked Ohio State. Maybe he's a little motivated in this game, but I do not foresee a competitive game. I have Ohio State winning 49-10. And then Minnesota, how the schedule, I guess, works well for them. After traveling to Ohio State, they don't have a tough game. They don't have an Iowa, a Nebraska, a Wisconsin. They have Purdue coming to town, who I think is far and above the worst team in the Big Ten this year. Barry Odom had to replace almost his entire team, and I think it's much, much closer to a Power Five or Group of Five roster than a Big Ten roster. He came in from UNLV, a lot of his former players on the team, but I just don't think they have enough to be competitive in this game. It'll be homecoming for the Gophers, big week. Boston College coming to town for hockey during the week. I could see them maybe starting slow in this game, but I think they'll pick it up, win convincingly. I have 31-13. And then I think if you're listening to this video and you want to go to a Gophers home game, you got to pick week 8 when Nebraska comes to town Friday night under the lights. Minnesota's first Friday night midseason game since they've introduced this new scheduling. They played Wisconsin on Friday last year, but like that's almost like a its own week in my opinion, the rivalry week at the end of the year. So in my head, this is like their first Friday game, but it's going to be the best atmosphere of the year at Huntington Bank Stadium. I think even more than that Wisconsin game because it's always cold that game, but it'll be October 17th, maybe a crisp fall day. This when the weather starts getting a little chillier. This is football weather right here. Um, and Nebraska has become a fun rivalry for Minnesota. It's obviously nowhere near the Iowa or Wisconsin rivalries, but I'd argue it's third, and it's overtaken Michigan and Penn State, even though they have trophies with both those teams. And they technically have a trophy with Nebraska, but it's not uh, regarded as a trophy by the school, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. But for the broken chair. Everyone knows same old with Nebraska. They're hyped up. Everyone's calling them a college football playoff sleeper. Dylan Raiola getting invited to Heisman. Matt Rule's is so smart. I do think they'll be better this year. I think they'll be a 7-8 win team. But minute Huntington Bank Stadium is going to be rocking. I think there were a few games last year that had really good home atmosphere. That USC game, that Penn State game, right off the bat. I think this one will be right up there. And Minnesota, the last few years, has just played really good in those spots when they have a big game at home. Outside of that Michigan game in 2023 or 4, no, 2023, excuse me, when JJ McCarthy was on the team. Like that Nebraska game week 1 that year, that was a great atmosphere. And I expect this to be a great atmosphere, and I think the Gophers will feed off that. On paper, Nebraska could totally beat Minnesota. It wouldn't shock me. But this is a game that I think, being that they're at home, I think they'll win. I think it could be an exciting game. Nebraska has a good defense, and it could be low scoring. But I got 34-28. Nebraska fan in my Twitter mentions did not like that prediction. But you know what? It's my prediction. I can do whatever I want. And then week 9, they go to Iowa. This is the I think the toughest part of their schedule when they go Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan State 3 weeks in a row. That will be the pivotal part in the schedule. So, in my opinion, they're going to this Iowa game 6-1 with the lone loss at Ohio State. And I think I'm high on Iowa this year. I think my bold prediction, I think they'll make the college football playoff. They'll be the 4th Big Ten team in. I think they're the 4th best team in the Big Ten. And Minnesota just broke this huge long streak in Kinnick Stadium. They beat Iowa, this controversial fair catch call. They got the monkey off their back, but I think the Hawkeyes, South Dakota State transfer QB Mark Gronowski, I think their offense will be better this year, a lot better. And I don't think Minnesota matches up well with Iowa. And I'll get into the Wisconsin thing. They bullied Wisconsin, but it just Iowa seems to there was that one game where Minnesota snuck by, but it just seemed last year they bullied them. Maybe they don't bully them this year. Maybe Minnesota can win this game, but I'm just unfortunately have high expectations for Iowa this year, and I have a 30-10 loss for the Gophers. And then week 10, it does not ease up. They host Michigan State, which, in my opinion, is the second biggest trap game on this schedule. You're coming off that Nebraska and Iowa game. Those are 2 that people are circling. And then you don't get a bye week here. You have Michigan State at home. People are, okay, Michigan State. Yeah, they haven't been good since they had Connor Cook. They haven't been good since they had Mark D'Antonio. But there is that Mel Tucker year in there too. I forgot about that. But this is a trap game because after this, the Gophers have bye week, and then they have road trip to Oregon. So I could see a lot of people are just brushing past this game. Win, move on. On paper, Michigan State, good roster. Jonathan Smith, year 2 from Oregon State. Aiden Childs, year 2 from Oregon State. And Joe Rossi, former Gophers defense coordinator, year 2. I kind of have to make a bowl game if you're Michigan State this year. I don't know if a ton of pressure's on them, but they just hired a new AD, so I think there's a fair amount of pressure on Michigan State this year. And where this game lands in the schedule for the Gophers, where I referred to that trap scenario, there seems to be a game every year where before the season people are not looking at a game as a potential loss, and then it becomes a potential loss. I think this is the one on the schedule for the Gophers. If they're able to survive this Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan State trio with 2 wins, that is ginormous, huge, and a big moment in the season, I should say, before that Oregon game. But I think they'll sneak out with 1 win over Nebraska, and I have a loss to Michigan State here in a close one. 27-17. And then Gophers have bye week. Late in the season, PJ Fleck's known to be able to regroup in these scenarios, get the team back on track. And then they have a tough game at Oregon. Minnesota's first time ever playing at Autzen Stadium. Um, and I really, really, really wanted to pick the Gophers in this game. I love this spot. You get a bye week. You're going to Oregon. For the same reason I think they won't be competitive against Ohio State, I think they will be against Oregon. I think Oregon's going to be a running team this year. Injury to Evan Stewart at wide receiver, new QB with Dante Moore. I think they're going to lean on Mekhi Hughes, Tulane transfer running back. If I had to pick one of the top three teams in the Big Ten to miss the playoff, it would definitely be Oregon. I like Penn State and Ohio State a lot this year. I don't think they really have a weakness, and I could see Oregon maybe being they're going to still be a 9-10 win team, bottom line. And they could still go 12-0, but I don't know if they're going to be as good as they were last year. So I really wanted to pick the Gophers in this game, but it's so hard uh to win on the road against probably at least a top 10 team, especially when you have a redshirt freshman quarterback. But I think this is the moment where we're like Drake Lindsey's the guy. And this is when you start building to next year, where, in my opinion, you have a 2-year window here to make an Indiana type run and make the playoff. To have that 2019 season you had in this 2-year window, where you have Drake Lindsey and Coy Parrish together. So I didn't predict a win here, but I did predict a 31-28 Oregon win. And then the Gophers fall to 6-4. They have 2 games left on the schedule at this point. Go to Northwestern, play at Wrigley Field. I think in this scenario, it's going to be like last year after the Michigan game, which happened to be earlier in the year. But this is usually where the Gophers start playing really good football at this point of the year. And this Northwestern game just screams something that Minnesota would have a good game. But you are playing at a baseball stadium in November. And Northwestern is pretty sneaky. I like Preston Stone. I've talked about that. A couple of their additions from the portal were solid. I think the Gophers win this game, kind of like that Cal game where it's gonna. I think it'll kind of be a game where you're you have a lead the whole time, and it seems like you're dominating, but you're only up by 7 or 10. So I got 20-10 Gophers win. And at the end of the year, Wisconsin, I think they mollywop Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin stinks. I think a lot of Gophers fans then are like, hey, well, 8-4. You were good against Oregon. You beat Nebraska. You beat Wisconsin. There's going to be a lot of Gophers fans wanting more, but you got to understand where you are as the Gophers. I think an 8-4 season with a redshirt freshman QB would be great. Build you a ton of momentum for next year. You retain Coy Parrish. You retain Drake Lindsey. Javon Tracy comes back for another year. You get AJ Turner for another year. He could be your number 1 running back next year. And I think you have plenty of momentum then heading into 2026. I think 7-5 is the floor here. Because I said that Michigan State loss, but then you got that Rutgers and Nebraska game in there that, like I said, are not guaranteed wins. I'd put Wisconsin as guaranteed win. They suck. I'm saying it right now. They are just not good. I think maybe Luke Fickell's not even coaching that game. So, but like I said, I think realistically 7-5 floor, 9-3 ceiling, in my opinion. 10-2, that's such a tough ask. That 10-2 would mean you're probably losing to Ohio State and Oregon, and then you can't slip up in any of those games. You beat Iowa on the road, Nebraska at home, Michigan State at home, that Cal game on the road, Rutgers at home. Like, those are not easy games. 10-2, like, obviously it's possible. Like, they can beat Iowa and beat all those, but Drake Lindsey would have to have like a freaking Johnny Manziel type redshirt freshman season, which I think is a little much. So I'm gonna say 7.5 floor, 9-3 ceiling. In my opinion, 9-3 ceiling. Maybe you're sneaking into those college football playoff discussions. Maybe one of those wins is over Oregon, and you never know. So I think it's a really exciting year. A ton of variants. I would be wrong. Maybe they go 11-1. One loss to Iowa State. Who knows? Nobody knows. But that's my best guess. I appreciate you guys for listening as always. Make sure to come back on this channel, like and subscribe. Keep an eye out for other Minnesota Gophers and Minnesota sports content. Make sure to follow online at Gophers on SI, Wolves on SI, Vikings and Twins for some more written content. But appreciate you guys for listening, and until